As of today, about 66% of US households own a pet, which means that this kind of grief touches a huge number of people. And even though that might mean that many of us can understand how devastating it is to lose a pet, it's not reflected in our society or workplace culture, making that experience that much more isolating. More and more workplaces are making pets part of the daily culture, whether through office pets, dog-friendly offices, or benefits that recognize pets as part of employees' lives. So when that loss happens, it's felt in the workplace too. What I'm saying is, your office can't be truly pet-friendly if it's not also pet loss supportive. I'm Elizabeth Huang, founder of Heart on the Rise and an emotional wellness coach. And this is Hot Take, Soft Heart. One of the hardest parts of pet grief is how often people feel like they have to justify it. Not just the loss itself, but how deeply or long it affected them. So much so that prolonged grief disorder was officially added to the DSM-5, published in March 2022. It's classified as a distinct mental disorder defined by severe grief symptoms lasting at least 12 months or 6 months for children. In any case, it probably goes without saying that pets aren't typically considered in these kinds of discussions. But pets are part of our routine, our sense of home, our daily comfort, and our emotional lives. So when that loss happens, it only makes sense that it would affect your focus, energy, connection, and overall well-being in very real ways. And because pet loss is often treated like lesser grief or disenfranchised grief, people can end up carrying shame on top of the loss itself, feeling like they need to minimize their pain or move on faster than they actually can, if they can. And if that's true in ordinary life, workplaces can't pretend that pet loss suddenly becomes insignificant the moment someone clocks in. If workplaces are willing to welcome pets into daily life through pet-friendly offices, office pets, or pet-centered benefits, then they also need to think about what support looks like when those pets are gone. Pet-friendly culture can bring real benefits. It can improve morale, lower stress, and strengthen connection. But when a workplace makes room for the love of pets and has no room for the loss of them, that absence can be incapacitating. Employees can end up feeling unsupported, anxious, or even resentful, not only because of their own grief, but because the culture suddenly stops making sense. A workplace can't celebrate pets as part of daily life and then treat their loss like it has no impact on the people around them. Their loss or even their sudden absence can destroy the emotional fabric of a workplace. But that doesn't mean every workplace needs to become a therapy room. Part of the tension here is that workplaces do need boundaries. They need to function. They need policies that feel fair, usable, and consistent across different people and different types of loss. And that concern makes sense. Not every meaningful loss can or should be formalized into a policy in exactly the same way. But dismissing pet loss entirely isn't neutrality. It's a choice. And in many workplaces, it can come off as emotionally tone deaf, especially when pets have already been welcomed into the culture as part of daily life. Support can be simple. It can look like acknowledgement, flexibility, a conversation, or making room for someone to be human without pretending like nothing happened. We're not trying to turn work into group therapy. We're talking about responding with basic humanity when something meaningful is gone. Workplaces are trying to hold multiple substantial things at once: humanity, fairness, boundaries, respect, and the need to keep functioning. None of those things are unreasonable to protect. But once pets are part of the culture, their loss becomes part of the culture too. And when that loss gets dismissed entirely, workplaces don't come across as neutral. They can come across as emotionally out of touch or even harmful. Responding with care doesn't require a perfect policy, but it does require being willing to acknowledge what's real, at least as a starting point. So what does humane support actually look like without turning this into a giant HR manifesto? It can start with something very simple: talking about it before the loss happens. If a workplace has office pets, allows pets in the office, or leans into being pet-friendly as part of the culture, then managers should already be thinking about what support could look like when the loss happens. That doesn't mean every company needs a perfect policy or a one-size-fits-all response. It might look like a conversation, a different kind of conversation for different types of employees. It could be flexibility. It could be providing grief support from a third party. It's so much more than just the loss of a pet. You're also grieving a bond, a safe space who allowed you to be alone without feeling lonely, a reason to care. And that's why this kind of loss can hit so deeply. And that's why pretending it doesn't matter at home or at work doesn't make people more professional. It just makes people feel more alone. If you've been through this kind of loss, or you're anticipating this kind of loss, I really would love to hear what it was like for you. What did people understand well, and what did they miss completely? If you work somewhere where pets are part of the culture, I'm curious, what support would actually feel humane to you? This is a conversation worth having, not because every workplace needs a perfect policy, but because people deserve to be treated like people when something meaningful is gone. If you want to keep having conversations like this with me, you can subscribe or learn about working with me at heartontherise.com.